A single word can be a whisper from the past, an echo you didn't know you were listening for. For Wesley Harlow, a man who built an empire on calculated risks and ruthless decisions, that word was spoken with an accent he found amusing. In a city of millions, in a restaurant he never should have been in, he heard a ghost. He laughed at a waitress, a young woman struggling to get by, mocking the unfamiliar cadence of her voice. But in the space of a heartbeat, that laughter died in his throat, replaced by a cold dread. He was about to learn that the past is never truly buried. Sometimes it's just waiting to take your order, wearing the eyes of the daughter you threw away, like yesterday's stock market report. The air in Wesley Harlow's office on the 80th floor of the Harlow Global Innovations Tower was so sterile, so perfectly climate-controlled, it felt like a sample taken from another planet. It was an atmosphere of pure, unadulterated power, smelling faintly of expensive leather and ambition. Wesley stood before the floor-to-ceiling window, a vast, unforgiving pane of glass that separated him from the sprawling metropolis of Chicago below. The city was a circuit board of lights, a complex system he had in many ways mastered. From this height the people were nothing but insignificant specks, their lives and struggles a distant, abstract concept. At 58, Wesley was a monument to his own success. His hair was a distinguished silver at the temples, his suit a custom-tailored masterpiece of Italian wool that cost more than most people's cars, and his eyes. His eyes were the color of a winter sky, sharp and perpetually analytical. They missed nothing and forgave even less. "The board is getting nervous about the Kenner Tech acquisition," a smooth voice said from behind him. Wesley didn't turn. He continued to gaze at his kingdom. Let them be nervous. Nerves are for the prey, not the predator. Lawrence, have the final papers been drawn up? Lawrence Pike Wesley's chief operating officer, and the only man Wesley vaguely trusted, stepped further into the room. He was a decade younger, impeccably dressed, and possessed a mind like a steel trap. He'd been with Wesley for 20 years, a silent witness to the building of an empire. They're on your desk, but their legal team has inserted a new clause, a poison pill regarding intellectual property rights, if we initiate a hostile takeover. A hostile takeover is what they call it when they're losing, Wesley said, finally turning. He walked to his vast obsidian desk, a slab of polished rock that seemed to absorb all light and warmth from the room. He scanned the document, his eyes flicking over the dense legal text. Amateur. Tell our people to counter with a personal liability clause for their board members. We'll target their pensions. That will loosen their grip. That's aggressive, Wesley. That's the point, Lawrence. Wesley initialed the page with a flourish of his gold fountain pen. Aggression is clarity. Now I'm done for the day. I need a change of scenery. This place, he gestured around the opulent office, is suffocating. The Royce for dinner, I can have your table prepared. Wesley scoffed. No. I'm tired of starched linen and whispering sycophants. I want something real. Remember that place your assistant was talking about? The one in the Ukrainian village with the authentic food, Lawrence hesitated. The Gilded Spoon. Wesley, it's not your kind of establishment. It's humble. Perfect. I'm in the mood for humility, Wesley said with a smirk that was anything but humble. Let's see how the other half lives. It might be amusing. Miles away in a cramped two-bedroom apartment in the very neighborhood Wesley was preparing to visit, the air was thick with the smell of boiling cabbage and old memories. Annalise Petrova, known to everyone, as Anna gently adjusted the pillows behind her mother's back. Their mama. Is that better? She asked, her voice, a soft, melodic blend. It carried the crisp, flat vowels of a Chicago native, but underlying it was a gentle, rolling cadence, a musicality inherited from the woman lying in the bed. Katerina Petrova smiled a weak but genuine expression that lit up her tired face. Her hair, once the colour of wheat, was now thin and grey. Sickness had carved new lines onto her features, but it couldn't touch the kindness in her eyes. Always better when you are here, Moje Serdenko. My little heart. Anna squeezed her mother's hand. At 22, she was carrying the weight of the world on her slender shoulders. By day, she was a student at the University of Illinois, Chicago, buried in textbooks on social work, dreaming of a future where she could help people. By night, she wore the black apron of a waitress at the Gilded Spoon, a job that paid for their rent, their groceries, and the ever-growing mountain of medical bills that sat in a shoebox under her bed. Her accent, the one Wesley Harlow would soon find so amusing, was the sonic map of her life. It was the result of being raised by a proud immigrant mother who spoke her native tongue, at home intertwined with the English she learned on the playgrounds and in the classrooms of Chicago. It was uniquely hers, a testament to her heritage and her home. You need to rest, Mama. I have to go to work, Anna said, glancing at the clock. That place. They work you too hard, Katerina fretted. They need me. And we need the money. Anna replied, her tone gentle but firm. She kissed her mother's forehead. I made you soup. It's on the stove. And your medication is right here. Call Mrs. Popescu next door if you need anything at all. Be careful, Annalise. Always. Leaving the apartment felt like stepping from one world into another. She walked the few blocks to the Gilded Spoon. The familiar neighborhood sounds a comfort. The restaurant was a cozy, bustling place, a local institution. The owner, a portly, kind-eyed man named Mr. Demian, treated his staff like family. The air inside smelled of garlic dill and frying onions. It was the smell of community, of survival. She tied on her apron, the familiar weight a strange comfort. Her friend and fellow waitress, a cynical but loyal art student named Ben Carter, was polishing glasses behind the bar. Ready for another night of serving pierogi to the masses? He asked, without looking up. Just another Tuesday, Anna sighed, grabbing her notepad. But it wouldn't be just another Tuesday. Around 8 o'clock, the bell above the door chimed, admitting 2 men who were so profoundly out of place they might as well have been wearing spacesuits. The entire restaurant seemed to pause for a second. One was tall, silver-haired, radiating an aura of untouchable wealth and impatience. The other was slightly younger, watchful, and clearly uncomfortable. Ben nudged Anna. Whoa, get a load of the 1%ers. Wrong turn at the Gold Coast. They're just customers, Ben Anna whispered, though she felt a strange prickle of unease. The older man's gaze swept the room with an air of dismissive judgment that set her teeth on edge. Table for 2, she asked, approaching them with her professional smile firmly in place. The older man Wesley looked down at her. His eyes, cold and assessing, lingered for a moment. Yes, somewhere quiet, if such a thing exists in this establishment. The condescension in his voice was palpable. Anna's smile tightened, but she led them to a corner booth, the best in the house. She handed them menus. Lawrence Pike offered a tight, apologetic smile. Wesley didn't even look at her. He was busy scrutinizing a faint stain on the tablecloth, as if it were a personal insult. I'll be back to take your order, Anna said, her accent lilting on the last word. She retreated to the kitchen, her cheeks burning. She could feel the man's stare on her back. When she returned, they were ready. Lawrence ordered the borscht and beef stroganoff, pronouncing the words carefully. Wesley just pointed at the menu. I'll have that. The chicken thing. The chicken Kiev, Anna clarified. Yes, that. And a bottle of your best red wine, assuming it's not made in a bathtub, he added with a dry chuckle aimed at Lawrence. Lawrence looked mortified. Wesley. What I'm curious. He looked directly at Anna, a cruel glint in his eye. Tell me, where is that accent from? It's quite the collection of sounds. The question wasn't one of genuine curiosity. It was a verbal prod, a way of pointing out that she was different other. It was the kind of casual cruelty only someone who had never been made to feel small could inflict. Anna's spine stiffened. She had dealt with comments about her accent her whole life. Mostly they were innocent queries. This was not. This was mockery. I was born here. She said, her voice colder than she intended. In Chicago. Really, Wesley leaned back, a patronizing smile playing on his lips. You must have had a very colorful upbringing. It's quite thick. You should try to soften it if you want to be taken seriously. The words hit her like a slap. All her insecurities about money, about her mother's illness, about being caught between two worlds, surfaced in a hot wave of shame and anger. Ben, who had been watching from the bar, started to move forward, but Anna gave a tiny, almost imperceptible shake of her head. She took a deep breath, clutching her notepad so tightly her knuckles were white. She had to hold this job. She looked at the arrogant man in the expensive suit, the man who had no idea what it took for her to simply exist, and forced herself to be professional. "Will there be anything else, sir?" she asked, her voice trembling slightly. Wesley was about to deliver another witty retort when he stopped. His smile vanished. His eyes, which had been filled with derision, were now wide with something else. Shock. Disbelief. He was staring at her neck. Hanging from a thin, delicate silver chain was a small, tarnished locket. It was oval-shaped, with a tiny, faded engraving of a sunflower on it. It had been her mother's and her grandmother's before that. It was the one piece of real value her family possessed. Wesley's breath hitched. His face paled. He'd seen that locket before. 23 years ago. He had bought it himself from a street vendor for a few dollars, a pathetic gift for a beautiful, hopeful girl whose name was Katerina. A girl with kind eyes and a melodic accent. A girl he had promised the world to, right before he disappeared from her life forever. The room seemed to tilt. The ambient noise of the restaurant faded into a dull roar in his ears. He looked from the locket up to her face, truly seeing her for the first time. The shape of her jaw, the determined set of her mouth, and her eyes. They were his. The same startling winter sky blue. He felt a sudden crushing weight in his chest, as if the 80 floors of his tower had just collapsed on top of him. What is your name?" he asked, his voice a hoarse whisper. All the arrogance, all the power had been stripped away. He was just a man staring at a ghost. Anna was taken aback by the sudden shift in his demeanor. He looked as if he'd seen a spectre. "Annalise," she said. "Annalise Petrova." Petrova. The name hit him with the force of a physical blow. Katerina Petrova. He had sent her money, a conscience-salving pittance for the first few years, mailed to a generic post office box. Then he had stopped telling himself she had moved on, that she would have been better off without him. He had built his entire life on the foundation of that lie. Lawrence watched his boss, his expression, a mixture of confusion and alarm. "Wesley, are you all right?" Wesley couldn't speak. He could only stare at the young woman before him, the waitress with the funny accent, the daughter he had abandoned, his daughter, and he had just laughed in her face. The drive back to Wesley's penthouse was a silent, suffocating affair. The city lights blurred past the windows of the chauffeured Bentley, but Wesley saw none of them. He was seeing a tarnished silver locket and a pair of accusing blue eyes. The arrogant billionaire had left the gilded spoon. A haunted, hollowed-out man had taken his place. Lawrence, ever the astute observer, knew something profound had shifted. Wesley's sudden pallor, his choked silence. It wasn't about a bowed meal or a rude waitress. This was something deep, something personal. They entered the penthouse, a space even more sterile and vast than his office. It was a museum of modern art and minimalist furniture, a testament to wealth, so immense It had forgotten what comfort felt like. Wesley walked directly to the bar and poured himself a generous measure of Macallan 25, his hand shaking so badly that the amber liquid sloshed over the rim of the crystal glass. "Wesley, what happened back there?" Lawrence finally asked, his voice low and cautious. Wesley downed the scotch in one go, the burn in his throat a welcome distraction from the inferno in his gut. He stared at the empty glass. "Petrova," he said, the name sounding foreign and rusty on his tongue. "Her name is Annalise Petrova." Lawrence frowned, trying to place the name. "The waitress, I need you to find out everything about her." "And her mother?" "Katerina Petrova." Wesley's voice was strained heavy with a history Lawrence had never been privy to. "Everything, Lawrence. Where they live, how long they've been there, birth records, medical history. Everything. And you will do it yourself. No private investigators, no third parties. No one else can know. Is that understood?" The intensity of the order was jarring. For 20 years, Lawrence had managed billion-dollar deals and corporate espionage for Wesley. This felt different. This felt like archaeology, digging into the ruins of his boss's past. "Of course, Wesley. I'll start immediately," Lawrence said, his mind already spinning. He had a name and a place of work. It was a starting point. While Lawrence began his discreet investigation, Wesley was trapped in a prison of his own making. Sleep offered no escape. He was plagued by fragmented memories, a tiny run-down apartment that smelled of cinnamon, the sound of a young woman's laughter, her accent thick and charming, not a source of ridicule. The terrifying weight of impending fatherhood on a 19-year-old boy with nothing to his name but ambition and fear. He remembered the panic. He had just been accepted into a prestigious business program, a scholarship his only ticket out of poverty. A baby. A baby was an anchor. Katerina, an immigrant waitress herself back then, had been ecstatic. She saw a family. He saw a cage. He'd made a choice. The most cowardly, most ruthless choice of his life. He packed a bag, left an envelope with $500, every cent he had, and a short, brutal note. He told her he wasn't ready, that he was no good for her. He told her to forget him. And then he ran. He ran all the way to the top of the world, never once looking back. Until now. Anna went home that night feeling shaken and strangely violated. The encounter with the arrogant man had left a bitter taste in her mouth. It wasn't just his mockery, but the bizarre transformation at the end. 1 minute he was a condescending tyrant. The next he looked like he was about to have a heart attack. She recounted the story to Ben as they cleaned up after closing. "What a creep," Ben said, slamming a clean beer mug onto the rack. "First he insults you, then he stares at you like you're a long-lost ghost. Rich people are a different species, I swear." It was the locket, Anna mused, touching the cool metal at her throat. He started acting strange when he saw it. "Maybe he's got a thing for cheap jewelry," Ben grumbled, but he looked thoughtful. Or maybe it just reminded him of something. Either way, good riddance. Hope he never comes back. Anna hoped so too. She had enough to worry about. Her mother's cough was getting worse, a deep rattling sound that echoed in the small apartment and kept Anna awake at night. The latest letter from the hospital's billing department was sitting in the shoebox, unopened. She was afraid to even look at the numbers inside. A new experimental treatment was mentioned by the doctor, but it was prohibitively expensive, not covered by their basic insurance. The word futile hung in the air every time she considered it. A few days later, a new worry was added to the pile. A crisp, formal envelope arrived. It was an eviction notice. Their building had been sold to a new property management firm, and the new owners were terminating all existing leases to renovate and raise the rents. They had 60 days to vacate. Anna felt the floor drop out from under her. 60 days. It was impossible. Her mother was too frail to move, and they had nowhere to go. The city's rental market was brutal, and security deposits were a luxury she couldn't afford. That night, she sat with her head in her hands at their small kitchen table, the eviction notice, and the unopened hospital bill laid out before her like a judgment. The weight was unbearable. For the first time, she felt truly, utterly hopeless. Meanwhile, Lawrence Pike was proving his worth. Using discrete databases and making carefully worded inquiries, he began to piece together the life of Annalise and Katerina Petrova. He obtained a copy of Annalise's birth certificate. Father unlisted. He found their address, saw the state of the building from a distance. He discovered Katerina's medical records saw the diagnosis idiopathic pulmonary fibrosis, a progressive terminal lung disease. He read the doctor's notes, saw the grim prognosis, and the mention of a costly long-shot treatment. He even learned about the eviction notice. He compiled it all into a slim black folder. Every page was a testament to a life of struggle, dignity, and quiet hardship. It was the life Wesley Harlow had run away from. He presented the folder to Wesley in the penthouse. Wesley took it with a trembling hand and sat down heavily in a leather armchair. He opened it and began to read. Lawrence watched as every line seemed to etch a new layer of pain onto his boss's face. He saw the birth certificate, the date confirming his fears. He saw the medical diagnosis for Katerina, the woman he had once loved, and a low guttural sound escaped his lips. He saw the eviction notice, a cruel, mundane detail that felt like a punch to the gut. He had built an empire worth billions, yet he had allowed his daughter and the woman who had carried her to live on the brink of destitution, a single paycheck away from disaster. The casual cruelty he'd shown in the restaurant was nothing compared to the profound, decades-long cruelty of his neglect. "They're being evicted," Wesley whispered, his voice cracking. "Her mother is dying." "The prognosis is not good without intervention," Lawrence confirmed softly. "The experimental treatment offers some hope, but the cost—" Wesley stood up, pacing the room like a caged animal. The guilt was a physical thing, a poison flooding his system. He had to do something. But what he couldn't just walk up to them and offer a check. Not after what he'd done. Not after he'd laughed at her. The shame was too great. "I'll handle it," he said, his voice regaining a sliver of its usual command. But now it was fueled by desperation, not arrogance. Anonymously. He devised a plan with Lawrence. They would use a shell foundation, one of the many philanthropic arms of Harlow Global, to intervene. It would be untraceable back to him. A few days later, Anna received 2 phone calls that would change everything. The first was from the hospital's billing department. A woman with a cheerful voice informed her that an anonymous benefactor, through the New Horizons Charitable Trust, had paid her mother's entire outstanding medical balance. Furthermore, the trust had fully endowed the cost of the experimental treatment program for Katerina Petrova. Anna was so stunned she dropped the phone. She picked it up, her hands shaking, and asked the woman to repeat herself. It was true. The mountain of debt was gone. Her mother had a chance. Tears of disbelief and relief streamed down her face. Before she could even fully process the news, the second call came. It was from a man identifying himself as a representative of the Secure Homes Initiative. He informed her that their records indicated she and her mother were facing an unjust eviction. As a result, the initiative had purchased their entire apartment building. All eviction notices were rescinded, and rent for all existing tenants would be frozen at its current rate for the next 5 years. The world seemed to have turned upside down. It was a miracle, a bizarre, inexplicable, life-altering miracle. She ran into her mother's room, sobbing with joy, and told her the news. Katerina held her daughter's hand, a look of profound wonder on her face. But later that evening, after the initial euphoria had subsided, a seed of suspicion began to sprout in Anna's mind. She called Ben. "I don't get it," Anna Ben said over the phone, his voice laced with his usual skepticism. 2 miracles in one day. Anonymous benefactors. Sounds like something out of a bad movie. Who even are these people? New Horizons, secure homes. Sounds like corporate PR nonsense. I don't care what it sounds like. Ben, my mum, can get the treatment she needs. We're not going to be homeless, I know, and that's amazing. I'm happy for you, I really am. But don't you think it's weird? It's too convenient. It happened right after those 2 weirdos showed up at the restaurant. Anna's blood ran cold. She hadn't made the connection. The rich guy. "Think about it," Ben pressed. "He acted super strange when he saw your locket. Then boom, a mysterious foundation with bottomless pockets solves all your problems. I did a quick search. There's almost no public information on those trusts. They're ghosts. That's not how charities work. That's how billionaires hide their money." The relief Anna had felt began to curdle into a new, more complicated emotion, suspicion. Was it possible? Could the man who had mocked her, who had looked at her with such disdain, be their secret savior? And if so, why? The question hung in the air, a far more unsettling mystery than the source of her mother's accent. The thread had been pulled, and Anna was beginning to realize it was attached to something far bigger and more terrifying than she could have ever imagined. Wesley Harlow thought money could solve the problem. It was the tool he had used to solve every other problem in his life. He had built walls, bought companies, and silenced rivals with it. Now he had used it to build a firewall of anonymity between himself and his past. From the sterile safety of his penthouse, he monitored the results. He knew the moment Katerina was admitted to the prestigious Northwestern Memorial Hospital to begin her treatment. He knew the moment the deed to the apartment building was transferred. He had fixed it. He had provided. But there was no relief. The guilt did not subside. It merely changed its shape. It was no longer the sharp agony of discovery, but a dull, constant ache of cowardice. He had thrown money at the wound, but he hadn't been brave enough to look at the people he had hurt. Lawrence saw the change in him. The ruthless focus that had defined Wesley for 2 decades was gone, replaced by a distracted, haunted energy. During a critical video conference about the Kenetech merger, a deal worth $9 billion, Wesley simply zoned out. He stared at the screen, but his eyes were distant. Wesley, a board member from the other company, prompted, "Your counter-proposal on the R&D division." Lawrence jumped in, smoothly covering for him. "Mr. Harlow is considering the long-term strategic implications. We'll have a revised position for you by end of day." After the call, Lawrence closed the office door. "Wesley, you're going to blow this deal. What's on your mind?" "She deserves a father," Wesley said, his voice low. "Not a trust fund, not an anonymous benefactor. A father. And I laughed at her. He ran his hands over his face, the picture of a man defeated, not by a corporate rival, but by his own character. "Then you have to tell her," Lawrence said simply. What do I say?" "Hello, I'm the man who abandoned your mother and let you struggle for 22 years. By the way, I found your accent amusing. Can I be your dad now?" "She'll hate me. She should hate me." "She deserves the truth," Lawrence insisted. "Hiding behind shell companies is just another form of abandonment." The words struck Wesley with the force of a physical blow, because they were true. His grand anonymous gesture wasn't selfless. It was selfish, designed to soothe his own conscience without having to face the consequences of his actions. Anna couldn't shake Ben's theory. The timing was too perfect, too coincidental. The mysterious man from the restaurant haunted her thoughts. With a new sense of determination, she began her own investigation. Ben, a master of navigating the internet's obscure corners, helped her. They spent hours in the university library, digging into corporate registries and philanthropic databases. The New Horizons Charitable Trust and the Secure Homes Initiative were, as Ben had suspected, ghosts. They were registered to a P.O. box and managed by a law firm, Pike, Wexler and Associates, that specialized in corporate asset management. Pike Anna said, her heart starting to beat faster. The other man at the restaurant, the younger one. He seemed nice, anxious. Maybe his name is Pike, Ben suggested. He typed furiously. Let's see. Partners at the firm. No Pike, but let's check corporate officers for major Chicago firms. A few clicks later, an article appeared on the screen. It was from the Chicago Business Journal, a profile on the city's most influential executives. And there he was. A picture of the anxious man from the restaurant. The caption read, Lawrence Pike, COO of Harlow Global Innovations. Anna felt a jolt, as if she had touched a live wire. She clicked on a link to Harlow Global Innovations. The company's homepage loaded, and at the very top under the title, Chairman and CEO, was a face she would never forget. The silver hair, the cold blue eyes, the arrogant set of his jaw. Wesley Harlow. It's him, she whispered, her voice trembling. It's them. Ben stared at the screen, his usual cynicism replaced by awe. Holy crap, Anna. That guy's a legend. He's one of the richest men in the world. Why would he? The why was the terrifying gaping hole in the center of the mystery. Why would a man like Wesley Harlow, a titan of industry, suddenly take an interest in a waitress and her ailing mother? The encounter at the restaurant replayed in her mind his mockery, and then his sudden inexplicable shock when he saw her locket. The locket. It always came back to the locket. She went home in a daze, the names Wesley Harlow and Lawrence Pike echoing in her head. She found her mother sitting by the window, breathing more easily thanks to the new medication, looking out at the neighborhood. She was no longer being forced to leave. Mama Anna began, hesitantly sitting down opposite her. I need to ask you something about my father. Katerina's gentle expression tightened. It was a subject they rarely discussed. Anna knew only the barest of details, that he was young, that he wasn't ready, that he had left before she was born. Her mother had never spoken his name. What is it? Sedenko. Anna took a deep breath. Mama, do you know a man named Wesley Harlow? Katerina went utterly still. The color drained from her face. Her hands, resting in her lap, began to tremble. She looked at her daughter, and in her eyes Anna saw a flicker of a pain so old and so deep it was almost terrifying to behold. Where did you hear that name? Katerina whispered. Anna told her everything. The men in the restaurant, the mockery, the sudden change, the locket, the anonymous charities, the discovery of their identities. As she spoke, Katerina's eyes filled with tears, not of sadness, but of a kind of weary, heartbreaking understanding. I knew this day might come, Katerina said, her voice barely audible. I prayed it wouldn't for your sake. She got up slowly and went to her bedroom. She returned with a small wooden box. Inside, beneath a collection of old photographs and dried flowers, was a stack of yellowed letters and a single faded photograph. It was a picture of a much younger Katerina, vibrant and smiling, standing next to a handsome, dark-haired young man. He was barely out of his teens, but his eyes held a fierce, hungry ambition. It was unmistakably a young Wesley Harlow. He was my world, Katerina said, softly, tracing his face in the photograph. He was brilliant driven. He wanted to conquer the world. I just wanted to build a small one with him. When I told him I was pregnant with you, he panicked. He said a baby would ruin his chances. He left the next day. He just left. Anna asked, her voice thick with a new raw anger on her mother's behalf. He left some money. He sent more for a few years to a post office box. Then it stopped. I never tried to find him. I didn't want his money, Anna. I had you. That was enough. Katerina looked at her daughter, her eyes pleading for understanding. I didn't want you to grow up in his shadow, to feel like you were the reason he left. You were a gift, not a burden. Anna looked from the picture of the young, scared boy to the face of the arrogant billionaire on her phone. They were the same person. The man who had abandoned them was now trying to save them from the shadows. And he was her father. The word felt like ash in her mouth. This wasn't a story of a benevolent stranger. This was the story of a man trying to buy back a life he had thrown away. The generosity she had cried tears of joy over now felt tainted like blood money offered decades too late. The anger she felt was no longer just for herself, but a fierce, protective rage for the young mother her own mother had been. Driven by Lawrence's words, Wesley knew he could not hide any longer. He had to face her. He instructed Lawrence to arrange a meeting, not through an anonymous call, but directly. Lawrence called Anna's number. He had gotten it from the university records. Anna answered, her voice wary. Miss Petrova, my name is Lawrence Pike. We met briefly at the Gilded Spoon. I know who you are. Anna said, her voice hard as steel. And I know who you work for. Lawrence was taken aback by her directness. Then you know this isn't a coincidence. Mr. Harlow would like to meet with you. To explain. A torrent of emotions washed over Anna. Anger hurt and a sliver of terrifying curiosity. She wanted to scream at him, to tell him, and his boss, to leave them alone. But she also wanted to look her father in the eye. She wanted him to see what he had done. Fine, she said, her voice cold, but not on his terms. Not in his office, not in some fancy restaurant. There's a park near the hospital where my mother is. Lincoln Park by the conservatory. Tomorrow. Noon. He comes alone. He'll be there, Lawrence promised. The next day the sky was a brilliant, cloudless blue, the same color as Wesley Harlow's eyes. Anna stood by the Alfred Caldwell Lily Pool, a tranquil oasis in the heart of the bustling city. Her heart was hammering against her ribs. She saw him approach. He wasn't wearing his power suit. He was dressed in simple dark slacks and a grey cashmere sweater. He looked older, smaller, and infinitely more human than he had in the restaurant or in his corporate photos. He looked nervous. He looked like a father about to meet his daughter for the first time. He stopped a few feet away from her, his hands shoved awkwardly in his pockets. The silence between them was thick with 22 years of unspoken words. Annalise, he began, his voice raspy. Thank you for meeting me. Don't thank me, she cut him off, her voice shaking with suppressed rage. I'm not here for you. I'm here because I need to understand how the man who abandoned my mother could show up 2 decades later and think he could fix everything with a blank check. Wesley flinched as if she had struck him. That's not... I know money can't fix it. I was a coward. Then and now, hiding behind those charities. That was cowardly too. He took a hesitant step closer. I was 19, Annalise. I was a stupid, terrified kid with nothing. I saw you and your mother as the end of my life, not the beginning. It was the single greatest mistake I have ever made. Not a day has gone by that I haven't in some way thought about her. About you. The confession, raw and painful, hung in the air. But Anna's hurt was a shield that his words couldn't penetrate. You thought about us? She asked, her voice dripping with disbelief and sarcasm. Did you think about us when my mother worked 2 jobs to keep food on the table? Did you think about us when she got sick, when the bills piled so high I thought we would drown? Or did you only start thinking about us when you saw a familiar locket and realized your past had come back to haunt you? She took a breath and delivered the blow she had been holding on to, since the moment of discovery. You laughed at my accent, she said, her voice breaking. My accent. The one I have because my mother, the woman you left, raised me. You mocked the very last trace of her that I carry in my voice. Do you have any idea what that feels like? The raw, unvarnished truth of her words shattered what little composure Wesley had left. He visibly crumpled the weight of his name, his past, and his failure crushing him in that single moment. He looked at this fierce, beautiful, wounded young woman, his daughter, and understood that he hadn't just lost a child. He had forfeited the right to even know her. He stammered, searching for words that didn't exist. I am so sorry. Sorry doesn't pay for the last 22 years, Anna said, tears finally streaming down her face. She turned her back on him. Thank you for the money. My mother will get the care she needs because of it. But that's all we will ever take from you. Stay away from us, Mr. Harlow. Stay away from me. She walked away without looking back, leaving Wesley Harlow, standing alone by the lily pool, a billionaire who had everything and nothing at all. The confrontation in the park left no victors. Anna returned to her life, fueled by a righteous anger that felt strangely hollow. She had won the battle, but the war inside her raged on. For Wesley, the defeat was absolute. Annalise's words had shattered his defenses, and the echo of her accusation. You mocked the very last trace of her that I carry in my voice became the defining indictment of his life. The fallout bled into his empire. The ruthless focus that had built Harlow Global was gone, replaced by a haunted distraction. During the final negotiation for the $9 billion Kenner Tech merger, his distraction became costly. Robert Kenner, the opposing CEO, laid down an ultimatum. My board will not accept anything less than a 50% premium Wesley. Take it or leave it. A month ago, Wesley would have dismantled the man. Today, he just looked tired. Fine, Robert, he conceded, his voice flat. You can have it. Lawrence Pike, sitting beside him, was aghast. The Kennertech team couldn't hide their shock and glee. After the call, Lawrence shut the door. What was that? You just left nearly $1 billion on the table. It's just money, Lawrence Wesley said, his gaze fixed on the city below. It's the only thing I know how to give, and it's worthless for what I truly need. His work, the very altar upon which he had sacrificed his family, had lost all meaning. The empire felt like a tomb. While Wesley's world lost its color, Anna threw herself into her mother's care, trying to use the tainted money for its single noble purpose. But her anger was a constant simmering presence. Katerina, now receiving the new treatment and growing stronger, saw the destructive toll it was taking on her daughter. One afternoon, she took Anna's hand. He came to see you, didn't he? She asked gently. Anna nodded, unable to speak. Annalise Katerina said, her voice firm. I am not made of glass. You are vibrating with a hate that will tear you apart. Talk to me. Anna confessed everything, her cutting words, her rage, and the strange emptiness that followed. Katerina listened patiently before speaking. You have every right to that anger, my heart. But the boy I knew, he wasn't evil. He was terrified. He grew up watching his own father fail, and he was so afraid of that failure he ran from anything that might slow him down. He ran from me. He ran from you. She looked deeply into her daughter's eyes. Holding on to this hate is a poison, Anna. It will not hurt him nearly as much as it will hurt you. Her mother's words planted a seed of doubt in Anna's resolve, complicating the simple narrative of villain and victim she had clung to. Just as this new perspective began to settle, disaster struck. Katerina developed a severe secondary infection, a common but dangerous risk for patients with compromised immune systems. Her condition deteriorated with terrifying speed. Within hours, she was moved to the intensive care unit. The head physician, Dr. Matthews, met a panicked Anna in a sterile waiting room. "The infection is aggressive, and her system is very weak," she stated grimly. "The next 48 hours are critical." The floor fell out from under Anna's world. The hope she had carefully nurtured was extinguished. She was alone, watching her mother slip away. Ben was out of town, Mrs. Popescu too frail. In her desperation, a single name surfaced: Lawrence Pike. He was her only link to the one person who shared her blood, the one person who was, for better or worse, connected to this tragedy. Swallowing her pride, her anger, and her fear, she dialed his number. "Pike," he answered crisply. "It's Annalise Petrova." She choked out, her voice breaking. "I'm sorry to call. I didn't know who else." Lawrence's tone softened instantly. "Annalise, what's wrong? My mother. She's in the ICU. The doctors say it's critical. I'm on my way," Lawrence said without hesitation. "And I'm telling him." Before she could protest, he hung up. An hour later, Wesley Harlow walked into the ICU waiting room. He looked as if he hadn't slept in days. His expensive clothes rumpled his face, etched with raw panic. He saw Anna huddled in a chair, looking small and fragile, and his heart broke. He didn't approach with apologies or grand gestures. He walked to the coffee machine, poured a cup, and placed it gently on the table beside her. "Any change?" he asked, his voice low and stripped of all authority. It was the voice of a worried parent. Anna could only shake her head, too exhausted and scared to push him away. So he stayed. He sat in a chair across from her, a silent, unmoving vigil. He made no demands. He simply existed in that sterile space, with her, his presence, a quiet anchor in her storm. He made occasional quiet calls, not to brokers, but to hospital administrators, ensuring every possible resource was at Katerina's disposal. Hours bled into a day, and then into a long, terrifying night. They didn't speak of the past. They were two people united by a singular focus, the woman fighting for her life down the hall. In that shared silence, Anna began to see him not as a billionaire or a ghost, but as a man who was profoundly humanly terrified. On the second night, a nurse appeared, her expression gentle. "The fever just broke," she announced softly. "Her vitals are stabilizing. She's fighting back." Relief washed over Anna in a wave so powerful it buckled her, and she began to sob. Wesley stood, and after a moment of hesitation, tentatively placed a hand on her shoulder. It was not a gesture of ownership, but one of shared relief, of simple human comfort. And Anna didn't pull away. In that harsh, fluorescent-lit room, Wesley understood. His money could buy treatments and private wings, but it could not buy this moment. It couldn't earn him the right to share in the fear and the hope. The only currency with any value here was presence. And for the first time in his daughter's life, he was finally paying his dues. The crisis passed, leaving an exhausted calm in its wake. As Katerina was moved from the ICU, her recovery slow but steady, the dynamic between Anna and Wesley solidified into a fragile truce. The anger that had been a wall between them had been burned away by shared fear, replaced by a quiet, uncertain space. Wesley did not retreat now that the danger was over. He became a fixture at the hospital, a silent presence in the corner of Katerina's room. He learned a new language, one spoken not with power or money, but with quiet consistency. He brought books he thought Katerina might like, and fresh flowers from the conservatory. Anna once found him reading Ukrainian poetry to her sleeping mother, his pronunciation clumsy but earnest. He looked up, embarrassed. "Lawrence helped me find it," he explained. He said she liked poetry. A small, hesitant smile touched Anna's lips. "She does," she said, and for the first time, she chose to stay. Bolstered by this fragile peace, she began to talk. She told him about her mother's resilience, the Ukrainian lullabies of her childhood, and the fierce pride Katerina took in her grades. She showed him photos from her phone, a gap-toothed first grader, a beaming 8th grade graduate. For Wesley, each story was a painful, beautiful glimpse into the world he had forsaken. He wasn't just learning about his daughter. He was understanding the true magnitude of his loss. His own confession came a week later, when he found himself alone with Katerina. She looked at him, her gaze clear and direct. "Why now, Wesley?" She asked the question she had held for 23 years. "There's no good answer, Kat," he said, his voice raw, with a regret that seemed to have permanently settled in his bones. "Only a pathetic one. I was a coward. I built a fortress of success, so I'd never feel like that scared boy again. But I was just hiding inside it." Seeing Annalise, a wall crumbled. "And I saw what I had lost." He looked at the woman he once loved. "She is magnificent. You did an incredible job. She's everything a father could dream of." Tears welled in Katerina's eyes. "She is my heart. All I ever wanted was for her to be happy." "I want that too," Wesley said. "And I know I have no right, but I'd like to try to be part of her life. Not as a bank, but as whatever she'll let me be." Months passed, and their relationship was slowly rebuilt on small moments. He attended her social work symposium, sitting in the back row, listening with rapt attention as she presented her paper. Afterward, he simply said, "You're going to change lives, Annalise. You already have." She in turn made him eat at the Gilded Spoon again, where he learned the staff's names and listened to Mr. Demyan's stories. He never called himself her father, but sometimes when the past felt distant, she would slip and call him Dad, and the quiet joy on his face was more valuable than any stock price. The culmination of this fragile peace arrived a year after their first disastrous meeting. On the day of Anna's university graduation, Katerina sat in the front row, beaming with pride. Lawrence Pike stood discreetly to the side, a proud smile on his face. Wesley didn't join them. He stood at the very back of the vast auditorium, a face in the crowd watching, as Annalise Petrova, summa cum laude, walked across the stage. The announcer called her name, a name that was once the source of his shame and was now the source of his greatest pride. After the ceremony, amidst the joyous chaos, Anna found him. She was radiant in her cap and gown. "I was looking for you," she said. "I didn't want to intrude," he replied. "This is your day, your mother's day." "It's our day," she corrected him softly, holding out her diploma. "We did it." He looked from the diploma to her face, at the determined jaw and the winter sky eyes that mirrored his own. He saw not a reminder of his failure, but a testament to a second chance. He didn't hug her. It was still too soon for that, but she reached out and squeezed his hand. It was a simple gesture, but it was the architecture of a beginning. The past was not erased, but it no longer defined their future. And so, a story that began with a cruel laugh in a humble restaurant found its way to a quiet understanding in the back of a university auditorium. It's a powerful reminder that our past mistakes, no matter how great, don't have the final say. Wesley Harlow learned that all the money in the world couldn't buy back time, but that genuine remorse and consistent action could build a bridge to a new future. Anna Petrova learned that forgiveness isn't about forgetting. It's about choosing not to let the pain of the past poison the possibilities of tomorrow. Their story shows us that family isn't just about shared blood. It's about shared struggles, shared hope, and the quiet courage to rebuild what was broken. If this story of redemption and reconciliation moved you, please give this video a like. It truly helps our channel grow. Share it with someone who might need to hear a story of second chances. And most importantly, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you don't miss our next real-life drama. What did you think of Wesley's path to redemption? Let us know in the comments below. Thank you for watching.